I have done hundreds of successful negotiations in my career, and here are my top 5 tips to gain the upper hand in any negotiation in any deal. The first, and probably the most important, is to be prepared. You have to know what you want, you have to know what the other side wants, you have to understand the lay of the land, who has leverage, what that leverage is, who doesn't have leverage, where your strengths and weaknesses are. You have to be fully prepared so that you're not caught off guard during the course of a negotiation. And part of that preparation is you have your desired outcome and then you have your best alternative out. And knowing what that best alternative is up front will give you an upper hand because you'll be a step ahead. You won't be caught off guard having to think about, if I can't get everything I want, what am I willing to settle for? So going into it, knowing what the best alternative outcome to a negotiated agreement is will just set you up for success, because either way you win. You're either going to get everything or you're going to get something that's good enough to be accepted. Okay, so that's number one. Be prepared. Number two is build rapport and keep a positive attitude throughout the whole course of the negotiation if possible. Rapport building it's not only a tip for negotiations, but just sales in general. You win more flies with honey than vinegar. That statement holds true just in so many different areas of life, but specifically in negotiations. If you go hostile or you go angry or you dig your heels in, it's most likely going to lead to a negative outcome and you're not going to get what you want. But if you build rapport with the other side, you find common ground, find similarities, they're going to want to work with you, and that's going to help you get to your achieved outcome. You have to stay calm and you have to be persuasive. Most importantly, you want to be liked, if possible, by the other side. That's going to help you get to your desired outcome a lot easier, with a lot less hurdles to jump over than if you take a hostile attitude towards the other side. The third tip is listen more and talk less. Most people just want to talk about what they want, but really active listening is a super important part of negotiation, because people will tell you things, even in nonverbal ways. People will tell you things that you can kind of pick up on if you read through the tea leaves, and you have to ask open-ended questions in order to do that. So what I mean by that is, try not to ask things that you can answer with a yes or a no. Ask things like, somebody says something and you might say, tell me more about that. And that just lets them go, okay? Open-ended questions are the best way to gather more information, because people will often give you more than you even knew to ask for if you just shut up, let them do the talking, and ask open-ended questions, and then be an active listener. So while they're talking, ask follow-up questions, dive deep, show them that you're paying attention, because that makes them feel like you care about what they want. And ultimately, again, going back to number two, if they feel like they can trust you and they feel like you're going to be fair about things, and you've built that rapport to lay the foundation for the negotiation, you're much more likely to get to your achieved outcome. That kind of goes into number four, which is to use silence effectively. Now, most people are very uncomfortable with silence in a conversation, especially a negotiation where two sides are both trying to get independently to their desired outcome. And we use what's called a pregnant pause. Basically, you pause, let it be uncomfortable, let it sit out there, and then let them fill the dead air. Most people are really uncomfortable with silence and they want to talk and they want to fill that dead air. And oftentimes when you do that, you kind of, they're caught off guard and they're just trying to fill that dead space, and they may say something or give you something that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. And you want to let them make the first move and show you their hand before you show them yours. And number five is, in any negotiation, you're going to give up something. That's just the nature of negotiation. So know what your desired outcome is at the start, and then start your negotiation or your offer accordingly. Now, ideally, you let them make the first offer. Let them show you their hand before you show yours, like I said. And in real estate, what that might look like is, let's just say I listed a house and somebody makes this off. Let's just say it's a $500,000 house and somebody offers 480. Well, conventional wisdom says that buyer's really trying to get to split the difference and get to 490. So, if we make a counter offer at 490, then they should just accept. And while that might be true, they've made that first move, but they really haven't shown you what they're willing to do, because oftentimes buyers will come in low just to see what that seller's next move is. So you might just keep the conversation going by giving up a little bit and then seeing what the buyer's next move is from there. So maybe instead of going to 490, you go to 498, and then that that buyer's next move is going to tell you a lot about where they're ultimately willing to end up. The other thing is, when you're giving during a negotiation, when you're giving something up, don't give without getting. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. And oftentimes, if you have to give up something financially, there's other things of value that you can get in return. And we basically call that a trade. So don't just give, make it a trade, get something of value for that concession. I think that way too many people leave things on the table because they're just looking at the one conversation and they're not looking at, well, how can we bring all these other things into this same conversation? So going back to my example, let's say, okay, the seller's willing to give up $5,000 and go to $490, but we want a larger deposit, or we want you to get pre-qualified with our trusted lender so that we're more comfortable with your financing, or any number of things. But my point is, you can often get something when you're giving at the same time, because that function of giving on the other side of the table makes the other party more willing to give back because they're also getting something at the same time. So that's my top 5. And as a bonus, and this is why in selling or buying a home, you need a real estate agent to help you, because the experts at this, and I'm talking like world leaders, they never, ever, ever sit at a negotiating table as a decision maker. Very rarely. That's why they send surrogates or they send ambassadors, because they know that they're better off having a messenger to deliver their offer and receive a counter offer, and then having time to analyze it and strategize and come up with their next move, versus when you're sitting across from the person and you're the decision maker and they're the decision maker, and maybe you haven't had time to think through all the ins and outs of their specific offer or counter offer, and you can make a mistake. So one key piece of leverage to not give up in a negotiation is putting yourself in a position where you're put on the spot to make a decision. And that's why people have agents. That's why people have sports agents. That's why government officials have ambassadors. And that's why CEOs and presidents have vice presidents and general managers, because ultimately the person who makes the decision doesn't want to be put on the spot. They want time to analyze everything and then get back to them. So if nothing else, having a shield between you and the other party so that you can make the best decision and hopefully achieve the best negotiation is one of the most valuable things you can have. And that's really why agents exist more than anything. It's to be an advocate and to be that shield, so that you're not put in a room or on a phone call with the person that you're negotiating directly against. Because those things can just get really messy and they often fall apart. And you can look at the statistics of for sale by owner homes, and the reason why so many of them fall out of contract is because people get mad, they get hostile, they dig their feet in, they don't act logically, they act very emotionally, and that blows up a lot of deals. So those are my top 5 plus 1. If you take those and you use them, I promise you that the next time you're in a negotiation, you'll have a much more successful outcome.